Hi, I'm Laura Lee Scott, and I'd like to offer you an opportunity to try your hand at art. I'm interested in helping people develop their ability to use art to express themselves. And I think that it's a wonderful thing to get to do. Last time I had a lesson with you, I talked about using line. So we've got two elements of art that we've been talking about. We've talked about using line and space. So in order to create a work of art, you need space. And so we said that for a three-dimensional object, if you're making a piece of sculpture, you need a space that has three dimensions. But we're generally, in drawing, we're talking about using a two-dimensional space, and that is a space that has both height and width, or length and width. So we use a line to help divide that space, and I asked you to create a page as part of your activity in learning to draw, a page full of lines. Now you remember when you were learning to write and do arithmetic as a young student, that your teacher had you fill whole pages with the letter A, or with your sums, your multiplication facts, and it was rather repetitive and it could be boring. And so sometimes these early bits of learning, these elemental bits of learning, can be a little bit tedious, but it's so important to follow through with that, just like piano practice. So I hope you did take the time to develop a few formats. Format's another word I like for you to remember. I use it a lot. And the format is simply the space in which you're working, the space upon which you're developing your artwork. And so a format can be horizontal or vertical or horizontal. In other words, we call this on the computer, we call this the portrait format, and we call this the landscape format. But the orientation is what we're talking about. And of course, there's square format as well, and might be able to come up with several others, but generally in art making, we're using those formats. I've seen some pretty amazing things, though, done with other shapes, and I'm thinking of an artist, Frank Stella maybe is one I'm trying to remember. I won't go there because I can't remember my art history well enough at this moment to tell it. So anyway, if you notice, these lines sort of suggest ideas to you. This one looks to me like a distant landscape with some mountains maybe, and maybe here also, that kind of thing. And then if you wanted to develop it, well, you surely could. You could create some shapes that represent and suggest ideas. So you could definitely, once you've established a line, you can just do lots of things with it. And you might have some fun doing something like that. So just developing those ideas. Something like this almost suggests a person. I mean, this could easily be a shoulder and a leg. And so you might be able to, in some way, think of this as a figure and a form. So maybe you've got an idea that would go with that, and then you need to figure out what goes back here, and maybe just a curtain, maybe a single line. Sometimes the addition of another line, just one more line, really helps to develop an idea. And, it doesn't have to represent anything. This game right here is sort of like looking at clouds and trying to see elephants or rabbits or angels or whatever. And it's a game that we kind of naturally tend to do. I have a friend who plays a game with me where we see faces in all kinds of odd places around us, and it's so much fun to send back and forth to each other those images we've found that reflect the idea of a face. Sometimes they look like robots, and sometimes they look very strange, very unusual things that we come up with, but that's a fun kind of thing to do. So you can definitely create something that is representational, something that suggests a real thing, a real picture in your mind. That's a fun thing to do. But also then there are ideas where the design itself becomes important, and it is a piece of art for the sake of its own beauty and its own the special way that it looks, its own uniqueness. So here we've got something that could be just a design. And if I were working in my sketchbook, I might find a piece of string that I wanted to put on the page. And then I might do something like this, and that might be all I did. I might use a colored pencil to create some color areas on that page, or a piece of paper, a colored piece of paper off of a magazine, out of a magazine that I've torn. Sometimes I tear open an envelope, and I particularly like the way the torn paper looks, and I'll save that and glue it down onto a sketchbook page. And I think I showed you some of those last time, those kind of things. But there's just any number of ways you can develop your ideas on the page. Now, I told you that this is a line, okay, but this is a shape. And so we tend to think of the world in terms of the shapes. We tend to think of the shapes that we see around us. And usually, just like in a coloring book for children, you'll see that they're outlines. The things that are drawn in the book, so it's maybe a duck, they're outlined. We tend to think of the world as if things are outlined, but if you look around you, hardly anything you see in the world has a line drawn around it, and so the line simply represents the edge. So here on the box, I would draw a line to represent this edge, and the reason I see that edge is because there's light hitting this side and less light hitting this side. There's a lot more light hitting the top. So if I were to think of this box in terms of lines, I would have this line, this line, this line, these two, and these two back here, and this. So there would be several lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lines. And drawing a box is a really important thing to be able to do. Most of us remember when we were young, somebody who was clever showed us how to do this. And then connect, I've already made a mistake there. Connect the lines like this. And so we made a box. Let me do a better job of that. Maybe I can do a better job of that. Okay, and then you connect the lines, and you've got a box. And so I've seen that done quite a bit. But I want to try to get you to draw a box in a different way without showing, this one is transparent. I'd like for you to be able to draw a box that's not transparent. And this will be sort of a practice activity that you can do to help develop your skills. But I want you to think of a box, first of all, looking across the top of a box, you see it a little differently than, okay, I'm gonna get a little box out here and show you something. This little box right here, when you look across the top of it, it's rectangular and it's very regular. But when you turn it up like this shape changes. So you see it here as a rectangle, and it's got long sides and short top and bottom. But when you turn it like this, these long sides seem to be smaller. And back here, they seem to move closer to each other. And so the shape changes. So instead of this shape, what you're seeing is something like this. So shape gives you an indication of the orientation of the box. Shape helps you understand how that box is sitting, or if it's suspended in the air, maybe how it's hanging. So when I look at this box, it's presenting a corner to me. So I can make a line to represent that corner. Now the line is an abstraction. There's not really a line there. Almost, because there got to be some markings on the box. But normally a white box, you don't see a real line there. You just perceive it as a line because it's an edge. So you've got that edge, and then we've got another line that comes back at an angle, and I can hold my marking tool upright at the corner and line it up with that long edge there, and I can see the angle at which that line comes away from that edge. And so then I can sort of make that same kind of judgment, and I think I've misjudged it. And it's a good thing to go back and check yourself when you make a mark, because if I had continued to work with that mark at the wrong angle, it would throw everything else off. So I've corrected that, and I think I've got a little bit better idea of it. And I can also tell how long that line needs to be. So, and what I'm doing when I do this is I'm measuring from this corner. There are the length of about 3 of these little marks, these little marking tools, these little Conte crayons, to that corner. So that's about 3. Now let me see how many it takes to go back. Let me hold it up right and see how many it takes to go back. 1.5. So I have to make this about half as long as this. So let's see if I've done that. Yeah, I've got it just about right. So that's where the back corner is. And then I know the back corner, if that box were not, if the lid were not messed up, it would lie down a little flatter like this. And then I've got to figure out where that corner is in relation to that one. And so I can see, using my tool again, that it's about 2.5. Let me think how to figure that. It's about where I have it. That's good. And then this line comes away from that one, and I figure out where that corner is and make the 2 meet there. And then I know that this line and this one have to be almost parallel to each other, and this line has to come up quite severely because I'm looking down at it. So it seems to come up more at an angle. This one not so much. Now you can see that my drawing is very sketchy. I haven't drawn very solid, hard lines like this. I haven't been very, very careful. I haven't used a ruler, even though I'm drawing straight lines. So you can see that what I'm doing is very sketchy. If I want to develop the drawing even further, I might go back and correct any errors I see and make the lines harder. But you don't have to do that. So that's the idea of a box I'm wanting you to practice. And here's a good way to do it. Start with the foreshortened top. The word foreshortened is a good one for you to learn. Let's see, I'll write it here. When you foreshorten, that means you make something shorter from front to back. Here's an example. If you look at this round surface, straight on, it looks round. But when you turn it away from you, it looks shorter from front to back. And you'll see this line shorten from front to back. If you do that, maybe get something at home on which you can make marks. A paper plate works pretty well. Make those marks and notice how this shape becomes elliptical and the distance from front to back shortens. So that's what we're going to do with the box. The box, the same thing happens on the box. And I think I might be able to show, no, that one doesn't have a good mark for it. Here, we'll just do it this way. When you look at the box like this, the line is long. But as you turn it away from your face, the line gets short from front to back. That's called foreshortening. It's a visual, it's an optical effect, and you have to be able to capture that on your paper in order to draw the box. So here's what I suggest. Learn to make the box, the top of the box, diamond shaped. So the line from front to back is shorter than it would be if you drew the box. If you drew the box looking at it from above, the line would be long like this. But when you turn it away from your face, it makes that line shorten. So that's a foreshortened top. Once you learn to make that foreshortened top, that's going to help you draw the rest of the box, because you get the foreshortened top right and you pull down the sides, and because this edge and this edge are farther back, they're going to be shorter. They're not going to come down as low on the page. And so you know then that this line and this line is parallel, and by the way, this one as well. These three are parallel. You know that these three are parallel, and this one has to be parallel to that. So you can practice those kinds of box tops, those kind of box drawings, over and over and over until you get very good at drawing them. Now, Bruce McIntyre in his book says that you should be able to draw that box in something at a first grade level, something like in 30 seconds, correctly drawn. And so practice maybe to increase your speed at doing that, but get it right. Getting it right is important. And then as you learn to do it, practice more and more until you can do it right and quickly. So you're first working for accuracy and then for speed, but that's foreshortening from top to back. Foreshortening is short from front to back. Short from front to back. And so foreshortening is what you want to do when you're working with something that you're trying to get to lie down flat. So the next time what we'll work on is a cylinder with a foreshortened top on it. So that will be a good starting place for us next time. We also can develop the box into a table. So watch the table. And these are just activities that you might like to practice on your own. So we do the table like this. And here's a little pedestal table that was drawn pretty much correctly in a real short period of time. And it's got a foreshortened top, short from front to back. So thanks for being with me, and I hope you'll join me again for the next lesson.